All right, so we are recording now. This is the announcement that I had posted. So again, I apologize if any of you went to the campus today to see me. This Zoom link that I have here will be the same Zoom link for the whole semester. It's the Zoom link that you'll use to meet with me during my online office hours. And it's also the Zoom link that you'll use to meet if you don't want to come to the classroom, if you want to join via Zoom. You always have that option. The face-to-face students that signed up for an in-person class, I wanted to allow that option in case you're feeling sick, in case you feel uncomfortable, because we never know what's going to happen with this COVID. So I wanted to allow you that option. So if you want to come to the in-person session, you can, but if you want to join the session online, you can do that. You always have that as an option. And this is the Zoom link for doing that. So if you wanted to copy that and put that somewhere, so you have that. But I do want you to try to attend on Wednesdays, whether it's in class or via Zoom. Now, if you're an online student, because I'm also doing this for the online students, I'm allowing them to join. If you signed up for the online course, which is the 1436.902 class, you're not required to come to the meetings. It's optional. So you have that option of joining via Zoom. Okay. So just so that you know the difference between that. But I do count that as part of your participation grade. You can miss 2 classes though, and it won't count against you because I know things happen in your life. If you have any more than 2 absences from the Wednesday class meetings, then you can make them up by doing an extra assignment to make up for your attendance. So if you see that your attendance, you got sick and you had to miss a couple weeks, you can make that up. So just make sure you let me know and I'll give you an alternate assignment for that. Okay, does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So our class meets Monday and Wednesdays. So the Monday day is going to be a work day because I want you to have time to really read the chapter. So you're going to have an interactive textbook this semester where you're going to read. It's digital, it's online. You're going to read, but you're also going to answer questions and you're going to write some code as you read the textbook. And it's going to be recording how you do on that. Now, if you mess it up, you can keep redoing it until you get it perfect. And so everybody should have it perfect on that, but it is very time consuming, but it makes sure that you understand all the different concepts in the book. So it is going to take you some time to do that. And so I'm hoping that Mondays is a good day for that. I will be in the computer classroom at Wiley and 212 on Mondays during your class time. So if you want to come in and work, and if you get stuck, you can ask for help. Or if you want to work from home during that time, that's fine. But we won't actually be having class section. It'll be a one-on-one tutoring type of thing. So if you're getting stuck on assignments, you need some extra help, you need some tutoring, that's a great time to come in and work. You don't have to make an appointment. You just come in. And if you need help, I'm there. But if you want to work from home and you feel okay, then that's great too. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes, ma'am.
And Wednesdays is the day that we're going to go over the material, do some, I like to play a game called Kahoot. Kahoot is a game where I can ask you quiz questions basically, and you can, say what you think is the best answer. And it'll say like how many people picked this one, and we can go over it. That gives me an idea of whether you're understanding the material or not. And then I also like to do some group exercises and things like that during class time. So class time is the Wednesday, dates on the syllabus where we're either going to meet in class or via Zoom. So those are the 2 options. And again, for the online students, that those meetings are optional. You can join. I recommend you join if you can. I'm also going to record all the sessions. And so you can always, if you miss it, you can always watch that. But you do get credit for being a part of it because I do want you to try to do the Kahoot questions and practice the group projects that I have in that. So if you do have to miss class, you can miss 2 without it counting against you, but you can do alternate assignments to make up if you miss more than that. So it's, if you have to miss, that's okay. Just let me know if you missed more than 2. Okay, so I am located at the Wiley campus. My office is in 213, and it's over at the student center. So you can come see me there. However, I like to be in room 212 if I can. So on Mondays, I'm going to be in 212. I'll be over at the student center on Wednesday afternoons, but it's not the most ideal situation just because I only have my computer and you'd have to bring a computer. I'm not in a lab where I can help you with the computers and everything. So I like to be in the lab if possible. Or I like to help you via online through Zoom because you can share your screen with me and I can share my screen with you. And I think that works really well. It's kind of hard in my office to do very much unless you have a laptop. So I try not, I like to be in there, but I'm not in there as much as online and in the classroom. Okay, so one of the things with the face-to-face class, you're in the first day program, which means that when you register for the course, you automatically paid for your textbook. And that's that digital interactive textbook that I was talking about. It's called Revel. So when you click on course materials in Canvas, you should automatically be connected to Revel. Okay, so when you click here, course materials, it should take you to Revel and you can access the textbook there. It should connect automatically. Now you do have the option to opt out of this, but I would recommend that you don't do that because it is going to be part of your grade completing the interactive components. And it actually, you get a little discount for doing first day. So I'd recommend it's not linking for me, but it should work for you. It works if I don't use the student version. Okay, so you should be able to highlight and take notes in there and everything. Let me know if you have any trouble with that textbook. The 902 section, the online section, unfortunately, it didn't get connected to the first day. And once students start registering, they can't connect it because they already paid the fee. So unfortunately, we have to buy the access code from the bookstore or from Pearson, and then it will connect for you. And instead of it saying course materials, it'll say Pearson Revel as the link on the side in Canvas. And so that's the only difference. You'll see it there, Pearson Revel, you'll have the same activities and everything. Instead of it saying course materials, I'll say Pearson Revel because it didn't connect the way it's supposed to, unfortunately. Okay, as far as technology requirements, we are going to the face-to-face class. You can actually take your exam in class. So you're not required to, you can use the computers in the lab and everything. But if you're going to use Zoom, then you'll want to have a microphone and speaker, and you're all in here now. So hopefully you have that, but you could type in the chat if you want to. But it would be very helpful because if you want to meet with me during my online office hours, then it'd be helpful if you had a microphone for Zoom, but you can always meet me in person. It's not linking. Okay, I'll have to help those of you that it's not linking correctly with your textbook. And if you're going to take the exam online, I like to give everybody the option of taking things online because you never know what's going to happen with this situation with this virus. And so I like to give you the option, especially because you never know if you might feel sick or you might feel uncomfortable. The face-to-face class, you do have the option of taking the exam on honor lock, and then you would need a webcam and you would need a microphone and everything to do that. But the online students will need to take it on honor lock. So you'll need to have that as far as your technology goes, and hopefully a nice computer that will help you work through the course. It doesn't need to be a new computer. It should, you should be able to do it on a Mac, Linux, Windows, and anything that's fairly new, maybe in the last 5 years or so should work. Okay, we talked about this. I have a normal grading scale. If it's 89.5, I round up. If it's, yeah, 89.5, sorry. I round up. There's a lot here to read over. I know it seems like a lot. I already kind of talked about some of this Revel reading. That's the textbook. It has activities in there, and that's 10% of your grade. So that's an easy 10%. That's to make sure that everybody is actually reading the material as well as, attending and listening to the lectures and everything. Because I believe that that's the best way you're going to learn is answering those questions in the book and then being able to participate in the class sessions. Because if you don't read it, it's hard to participate. So I do give students credit for that. Chapter exercises are these exercises that walk you through the code, and I give it to you step by step. Click here, do this, type this. It's pretty easy because it's given to you step by step. You don't have to do any thinking about what you do. It's mainly just to show you how you can complete a project for all the different concepts. And so that part is given to you. That's why it's not rated that high as far as percentage-wise is what it's worth. It's only 5% because it's given to you step by step, but it still does impact your grade. Discussion activities, there's the first one is really simple. It's just an introduction. So make sure you do that one this week. Just, introduce yourself to the class. There's going to be other ones where you'll have to work together, where you might have to post part of the code and somebody else has to post the other part. We'll talk about that as we go through the class. That's 5% of your grade. I do have due dates for the discussion activities and the exercises. However, the exercises, I don't take off points if you submit it late, because it's either going to be completed or not completed for the exercises, because you're given step by step. So it's either you did it or you didn't do it, pretty much. And so if it's late, you can turn it in and still get completed. So everybody should have that 5% for the exercises, because you can turn it in all the way to the end of the semester and still get credit for it. However, I really recommend you try and stay on pace with the chapters that we're reading, because the exercises are supposed to help you understand what we're currently doing. And if you wait to the end to do them all, it didn't really do that. But I still want you to practice, so I still accept them till the end. The discussion activities have a due date. And if you go past that due date, it's 1 point off per day late. It's the same thing for the assignments in the class. It's 1 point per day late. And then once you receive half credit, I won't deduct any more late points. So if you have other things wrong, I'll deduct more points for that. But once you received half credit for being late, then I won't deduct any more points for that. Okay. Let's see. So review questions are basically just questions from the chapter where I might ask you to solve an equation. They're just a couple questions from the chapter to make sure that you're able to do some of the things that were mentioned in the chapter. They're 10% of your grade. And the same thing, they have a due date, and then I take off 1 point per day late. So you want to make sure you turn those in on time. However, if you turn in a day late, it's not that big a deal. It's only 1 point off per day late. Up until half, I stopped deducting after half. So the deal with that is, if you, let's say you're 20 days late and the review questions were only worth 10 points, then I will only deduct 5 points for being late, even though you're 20 days late. So the same thing, if you received a 0 by the end of the semester, you can go back and redo the ones you received a 0 for and receive half credit for them. Okay. So you can redo things and get half credit for it if you didn't like your grade, but only up to half credit after it's so late. Okay. Same thing with assignments. Assignments are worth more of your grade, because they're going to require that you take everything you learned in the chapter and what you did on the exercises and the review questions and put it all together to solve a problem. Okay, so they're worth more. They're 20% of your grade, and they have due dates, same thing, a point per day late. I want you to do those independently. Same thing with the review questions. And so you're doing it on your own. You're not working together with another student on that. It's to make sure that you understand it. And so if you ever need help on something and you're stuck, please come to me, or there's a tutor in the class. His name is Matt. Please don't hesitate to schedule an appointment with him or come see me, because I want to make sure that you understand it and you're not asking other students in the class, because there's a couple reasons for that. They may not know what they're doing, and so they may confuse you more. Sometimes when students try to help, they just end up giving it to you, and that's not really what we want, because that doesn't help you understand it. So I want to help you, but I don't want to just give you the answer. I want you to actually figure out how to solve it. So I'll try and help you in a way that doesn't give it to you, but helps you to solve it on your own. So please make sure you're coming to me and not going to other students in the class for help. Quizzes, you're going to have quizzes throughout, because I really believe instead of having tests that are over like 5 chapters, it's better to quiz you often so that you can focus on just the chapter you're working on and know how you're doing in that particular chapter. But what that means is you really have to keep up with and make sure you don't miss the quizzes, because there will be quizzes every chapter or two. So it's important not to miss those, because you can't take those past the due date. I will drop your lowest quiz score. So if you miss one quiz or you don't do well, I will drop 1. But if you miss a quiz after that one that I dropped, then it will get a 0 and you can't make it up. Okay, so you want to make sure that you really mark down or set an alarm. They're due on Sunday nights. Everything's due at Sunday at 10. I know students always ask me, why did you pick 10, not 11:59? I used to have 11:59 before I had kids. And I discovered that then students would email me at 11:30 at night because they were just starting their assignment. And sometimes I'm not awake at 11:30 at night because my kids wake me up really early. So I like to make it 10, and that way hopefully people email me at 9:30 instead of 11:30 asking for help. So that's my reasoning is I want to be able to better help you. And I know that if I push the due date later, then students ask for help later. And so I moved the due date up to 10 so that people will hopefully ask for help earlier instead of later on Sunday nights. That's my goal. So you have 2 attempts to take every quiz. So if you take it early and you don't like your score, you can take it again, but it takes an average of the 2. So you don't want to take it so early that you completely mess it up because it's still going to bring down your average. But you could boost your average a little bit if you do take it again. But you have to make sure that you don't wait till 9:50 on Sunday to take it because you won't have time to take it again, if that makes sense. Okay, so you do get to use your book and your notes and your programs for your quizzes. I want to make sure that you're using that as an opportunity to check your understanding and really learn the material. Because at the end of the course, you will have a final exam, and that exam you won't be able to use your book. So really the quizzes are for making sure and checking everything, checking understanding, and everything else is preparing you for this final exam so that hopefully you'll feel ready by the end. And the final exam, again, if you're in the face-to-face class, you could take it in person, or you can take it on honor lock if you're online, or if you're just not feeling well, you can do that. You have that option. Okay. And then for my face-to-face students, participation is 10% of your grade. So if you can miss 2 sessions, it won't count against you. If you miss more than that, just contact me for an alternate assignment to make up for those points. For the online students, participation is not part of your grade. So I did up the discussion and the exercise amount percentage-wise because I can't require that you be here on certain dates and certain times. And so that's why I don't require participation, but you're welcome to join us if you want to. Does that make sense? Does anybody have questions about any of that?
So far, no.
Okay, so here's the calendar. So here's where we are. Monday was a holiday. Today we were supposed to meet in class, but again, I was not able to due to being sick. And so we're meeting online. Hopefully by next week, I will be back in the classroom on Monday. And Wednesday, Monday is a work day, remember? So you don't have to, I call it lab time. You don't have to come in and work on this. You can work on it from home. But I will be in the classroom if you need some help or have questions. And Wednesday is our class meeting. You can attend in class or you can attend online with the Zoom link that I gave you. Things that are due this week. I want you to read over chapter 1. It's a pretty short chapter. There will be a couple quiz questions. So if your book's not working, if it's not linking right, please let me know right away and we'll see what we can do about that, because you will have to get that to link so you can read that this week. I do let you turn in the readings late, but I want you to try to get them on time, and because it will help you keep up with everything else. I mean, if you don't read chapter 1, chapter 2, you won't really be able to do the assignments as well. And those do have point deductions for being late. So you want to make sure you keep on top of the readings. However, if you read it a day late, I don't take off points for that. So make sure you're still reading, because you'll notice that this course, one chapter builds upon the other. So you can't really skip chapters and you get credit for reading it. So make sure you're reading it even if it is late. Discussion activity 1 is really easy. It's just an introduction. So just post something about yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself to get to know each other. And then the chapter 1 exercise, I'm going to go over that with you today so that it'll be pretty easy. So we're going to talk about that today. Okay. And then for Monday's class, you're going to go over the chapter 1 assignment, which is related to the exercise that we're going to do today. You have a quiz on the syllabus in chapter 1. And then I want you to start reading chapter 2. Okay. Because we'll go over chapter 2 next meeting. So you always want to try to read the chapter before the class session, because I'm going to ask you questions about it and talk about it. And that's a great time for you to ask questions if you got stuck when you were reading it. Okay. So you can see the different class meeting dates, and everything here is due on Sundays, except when we get to the last week, finals week. So finals week, we are going to, make sure that we're done. I think the 15th, I wanted to see, is the 15th a Sunday? I can't remember if it's a Sunday. Okay, it is a Sunday. I was trying to put the 13th just so you'd have it done earlier, but that's okay because it's just the final exam, so I can grade it and have my grades in. So I did let you take it to the 15th. I want you to make sure that you have all your work in by the 15th as well. The 13th would be great if you're turning anything in late, but you are going to have access to materials. I do open up a couple chapters ahead so that you can always work ahead. So if you know that you have a wedding coming up or you have to go away for work, you can work ahead so that you're not losing points for being late. So work a week or two ahead if you can. That way, if things come up, you have that extra, time that you're already ahead. Okay. I didn't, in the schedule, I didn't have the names of the chapters, so they're listed here, if that helps. Okay. And then the student learning outcomes are here. This is a beginning programming class. You're not required to have any other programming classes. We're doing C++ in this class. So how many of you have had C++ before? Anybody?
I have.
Okay, you had it before?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you're not required to have any, but if you have it, it should be a little easier. Won't be the first time. If you've had any type of programming language before, you'll probably see that it's very similar. You have variables, conditionals, loops, arrays that we're going to talk about. So you'll notice that all of that is very similar, whether you've had Java or Python or C++ or C, you'll notice that those all have similarities. Okay, so if you need any type of accommodations in this class, like extra testing time, I do need to have a form from the access office and they'll send it to me. So make sure you see them about that. If you already have given me an access form, you should see that you have extended testing time. And if you go to take a test and you notice that you don't, please let me know. I may have missed it. As far as scholastic dishonesty, again, you're to be working independently on your assignments, your quizzes, your final exam, your review questions, all of that you're doing on your own. So you shouldn't be working together, which is called collusion. And I think that's the biggest problem I have is sometimes students try to work together and they think that's okay. But the reason why that's not okay is because you don't know how much one person is doing versus the other person. You don't know how much you're really getting out of it. I need to make sure that you know how to do it and that someone isn't walking you through it every time, because if you want to, if you're in computer science, which a lot of the students that take this class are, you're going to have to take another programming class after this. And everything is building upon each other. And when you get to the next one, you won't know what you're doing and it'll just keep building. And so if you need help, please come and see me. Don't go see someone else, because I'm going to try to ensure that you are able to figure out the steps on your own, but I can help you through that. So please come and see me instead of working with a student or getting help outside on that. Okay. So, and of course, you know that you can't take someone else's program. Getting things off of like chegg.com is not okay. You can't copy and paste code from the internet. If it looks like something that has, if I ask you to do a simple program with a simple loop and you have all these extra things in there, I will go looking online to see if I can find it. And make sure that you're able to defend what it does and you know what every line does if you turn in something like that. Because if it looks like something that is way beyond the scope of this class, then I will come asking questions. So please make sure that you know exactly what your code does and you're not copying things from online. I feel like I always sound so mean in that part, so sorry about that. Because okay, I don't think, I mean, we have a writing center and everything, but the main thing is we do have a tutor in this class. His name is Matt, and I will show you his hours in just a second. So you can also use him. I like to give students the option of using Matt because sometimes people think differently. So you may have come to me for help and maybe the way I'm explaining it doesn't make sense, and that's okay because we all think differently. You might want somebody else explaining it in a different way. So it's good to have somebody else as a resource. And Matt is a great resource. And so I will show you where you can find his information. So if you click on modules, that's where you'll find everything for the course. So some basic things about our college in these first two links. If you are having trouble with using Canvas and everything, you can click on those first two links. That'll help you with that. And you can read over the policies. But if you go to getting help, this is where you'll find the information about Matt here. He's at the Spring Creek campus, which might not be ideal for everybody. But online, on Fridays, he is online. So you can email him for an online appointment if that works better for you. Because I know a lot of you are at the Wiley campus, so that might not be convenient, but you can work with him on Friday. As far as my office hours, I do have some face-to-face. I can also meet at other times. If those times don't work for you, just let me know. But I do my online office hours by appointment. So if you click on this link right here, I use something called bookings, and it takes you to a nice little calendar. And if you click on a day, it will give you the times that are available. So if a student takes one of the times, then it will disappear. So you won't see that time. So it's a one-on-one situation. So you can talk to me about your grade, or you can bring up your assignment. There won't be any other students in there at that time. So I do give students 20 minutes because I want to make sure and give some times for other students to come in. If you need more than 20 minutes, then we'll schedule another time if we didn't get to finish what we were talking about. But I will have to cut it in case I have other students coming in. If I don't have anyone else coming in, then I can stay. But pretty much you just click on the time you want. And then you can add your details down here. Your name and your email. I don't need your address and phone number. In the notes section, if you could add just what are you needing help with? So do you have a question about chapter 2, the assignment? Just so that maybe I can pull other resources to show you some other examples. If I know ahead of time what we're talking about, I might be able to help you better, okay? If I have no idea, then it'll be hard to think up things while we're in the session, but just let me know what we're working with there. That would be great, okay? So hopefully pretty easy to use. If you find out that you can't come at the time that you scheduled, if you could cancel it, please, because that allows other students to schedule that time and make use of it. Also doesn't, when that time comes around and you're not in Zoom, then I start emailing to find out where you are. Did you forget what happened? Could you not find the Zoom link? And this is the Zoom link. That's the same Zoom link that you're using right now. It'll be the same. So hopefully convenient because you can just copy that link somewhere and you'll have that link for me. Okay. Everybody okay so far?
Yes.
Perfect. Just let me know if I'm going too fast or if you have questions. Course details, you can watch this video of myself. Again, I don't have the camera on right now because I look pretty awful. I was feeling okay with this COVID, and today it hit and I'm not feeling so great. I was wondering how I was going to do this, but I did take some medicine. My headache's going away a little bit. I'm starting to feel a little better, but I'm not turning my camera on today just because I feel awful. So I'm sorry that I don't have my camera on today, but you can watch this video. I have a little introduction to myself, so I'm not going to really go over that. I'm just originally, you'll notice that I have a little bit of an accent. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So I think it's going away, but I'm not sure. Some people say that I still say certain words with an accent. So if you ever have trouble understanding what I'm saying, just let me know and I can repeat it. I won't be upset or anything like that. I am really into this Society of Women's Engineers, or it's a national organization, but Colin is a part of it. If you want to watch this video, I highly recommend that you think about getting involved with a student organization. It looks really good on your resume. When you're applying for a job, knowing that you were part of a student organization is wonderful. And I know the males in here are probably wondering, that this isn't for me, but we do have males that were actually officers of SWE, as well as members. Right now, we don't have another computer club. We were thinking about starting one, but this is the only engineering computer club that we have. But it still looks good. I know that it does say women, but males can join as well. We are pretty active. We do things like tours of companies, although with COVID, that's been kind of tough. We do things like mock interviews, resume building workshops, having speakers. So usually once a month we have something going on, and I will post announcements on that, letting you know. what's going on with that if you're interested. But you could go on to Cougar Connect and actually look for SWE, and you can join, and you don't have to pay anything to join as far as call-in. And then you just get updates about meetings that we have. If you want to actually be a part of SWE, you will have to pay a fee to be part of the national organization. But as far as just joining and coming to our meetings, you don't have to pay to do that. So something to think about. My information is here. If you wanted to join our Facebook page, I'm not as active as I wish or that I should be with this. I need to start being a little more active, although I've heard that students have really moved to Instagram, not really doing Facebook anymore. But sometimes I will post things about, upcoming seminars or opportunities, jobs. And so you might want to just take a look at that or join that, follow that on Facebook. If you know of things, let me know. I can post things on there. Okay. Again, this is a hybrid class, this face-to-face section that I have at Wiley, but I know that I have some online students that are attending the session as well. So this is for the face-to-face students. They do have the requirement of meeting on Wednesdays as far as the grade for 10% of your grade. And the online students don't have to do that. That's optional. Again, you can miss 2 of those and it won't count against you, and you can still make them up. If you do miss more than 2, just let me know. You're always welcome to join via Zoom. I know this week you didn't really have the option of joining in person. I apologize. Hopefully things will be back to normal next week. I have assignments due on Sunday by 10. So this is the best plan that I could come up with for you, is to try to read the material before Wednesday. So Monday is a great day for that because you have that class time that we're not meeting. So use that class time. You can come in and actually sit in the classroom if you have questions while you're reading it or while you're going over it. You can ask questions. Please try to attend the Wednesday sessions. And you're going to do the interactive textbooks. You have questions in the textbook. You have exercises. Make sure you do those. Come in on Mondays for extra help if you need it. Schedule Zoom appointments. Don't hesitate to schedule Zoom appointments with me if you have questions. You can always send me an email, and it might be a simple question. We might not need to meet, but then if we need to meet, we might schedule something via Zoom. If it's a simple question about assignment, I might be able to answer it via email, but sometimes Zoom works better. If you can email me through Canvas, that would be a lot easier for me because I get a lot of spam to my regular email account. And the other thing that Canvas does that's really nice is it separates based on class section. So I don't have to ask you like, are you in Java or C++? Which class section are you in? I don't have to ask you those questions because Canvas separates that for me and has your name and everything on it. Plus, I know that it's you. I can't answer emails to my main email account that come from a Gmail account or anything like that, because I need to know that that is the actual person in the class and I'm not giving information to outside people. So if you email me through Canvas, that would be very helpful. You can call me. I do have my phone number on there, but I would recommend you email me just because we play phone tag a lot whenever students call because I'm not there, you're not there, and we play back and forth. So emailing me is a lot better. You'll get a quicker reply. I try and check my email throughout the day. I am going to post all of the recordings that we do via Zoom on here. So you'll have those there. If you want to do a Canvas orientation, you have that here. Okay. Anybody have any questions so far? You're all okay?
Yes.
Just a quick, my bad. I was just gonna ask, so we don't need to meet at all on Mondays?
No, it's completely optional. Yeah.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah, good question. Okay, so this is just a simple discussion board entry. Hopefully you've used Canvas discussions before. So just, answer these questions for me so we can get to know each other. Just click reply. And that's an easy 5 points for your discussion grade. Please do that by this week, by Sunday, and you'll get credit for that. I'll try and reply to everyone, but it takes me a while to go through those. You're not required to get Visual Studio for this class. If you want to, you can. I do have directions there. If it doesn't work, just let me know. This will be more helpful later, this practice website. So we'll worry about that later for practice problems. This is an online editor that I like to use. It doesn't require that you download anything. It's really easy. You type your code in and you click run. So I like C++ shell because it's very basic. You don't have to download anything. However, again, you're welcome to install Visual Studio if you want to. It's really up to you. As long as I get the C++ code, I just need that CPP file or a text file with the code in it. I don't need the whole project folder. I am good with that. Okay. So here are the chapter 1 slides. I'm going to go over those in just a second. Here is another resource for the structure of a C++ program besides what's in your book. I recommend you just look over that. I just posted again those Zoom class recordings on every chapter. So you have those, like this recording today will be posted there. So you have a link to that. When you do the Revel, you'll have a date in the book for the Revel reading when it was due, and that'll go towards 10% of your grade. So whenever you're doing that, it's not an all or nothing. You can do part of it and get credit for part of it. And if you get stuck, you'll still get credit for whatever you completed. And again, I don't take off late points for that, but try to stick with the dates because it'll help you stay on top of everything else for the class. Okay, we're going to do the exercise here together in a second, but the exercises are basically just a walkthrough of how to do step-by-step the code. So we'll go through that. An assignment, your assignment here, let me go back to the syllabus so you can see the due dates for everything. So you are going to submit your exercise so that I know that you did it, even though we're going to do it together. So that would be this right here. We're going to do that together in just a bit. This is the discussion posting, and then this is the reading. The assignment's not due until next week, so you don't have to worry about that. However, if you have extra time this week, you want to do it and get it done, that's great. But you have Monday's class period. You could work on that. You can work on that next week, and that's okay. But you can get ahead if you have the extra time. Okay. And then the quiz, and again, that's not due till the 30th, so that's a next week thing. Please don't click on the quiz unless you're ready to begin, because when you click that, the quiz, and then you click take it, it will start timing you. And even if you close it out, it will actually time you out after 15 minutes. So make sure if you're not ready that you don't click on it just to make sure it works, because it will start timing you. And then you'll get whatever grade you get with whatever you answer. Okay, so don't click it until you're ready. I always have students say, I just wanted to see if it worked. So it will work. Okay, so I want to go over the slides with you for chapter 1, but before I do that, is everybody okay with the course and how it works?
Yep.
If I have any announcements for you, like for example, today I posted that I wouldn't be able to meet in class because I tested positive for COVID. I will post that up there. So if something happens with the weather, if I'm not able to make it to class, so make sure you check your Canvas announcements for anything. I will also post announcements like, for example, there's this opportunity or that opportunity, and you can read it for things like that. I will say that at the end, students always ask me about extra credit. So I just wanted to show this to you. At the very bottom, there's an extra credit opportunity. It's ongoing throughout the whole semester. You can only do it one time and get 5 points one time, but I really think it's important that you get involved with things going on in your major or that will help you in your career. So it doesn't have to be, it could be like a resume building workshop because that'll help you. It can't be like an ice cream social, okay? But it can be something that'll help you with your portfolio, mock interview, or it can be something that's like a seminar that's related to your major, something that you're interested in. It could be like cybersecurity, talking about like secure coding, or I will post different things here. And if you know of things, you can post things here and you can pick something to attend. And it can be online or it can be an actual face-to-face session. But just give us a brief summary of what it was that you attended and you can get the 5 points for that. Again, if you know something, you can post it there. There's a new program called Handshake. I'm not sure if you're all aware of it. Have you heard of Handshake? They're trying to promote it. It's on Cougar Web. You should see a little section that says Handshake. And if you click on that, you should be able to connect to that. Handshake is going to help you learn about things that are going on with your major. And so to help you with like seminars, and it doesn't have to be through Colin. So if like there's a free Google seminar that you can attend, or Microsoft, or they will be posted there. And so things that you can see what you're interested in, it doesn't have to be just things that I post on here. You can go on Handshake and look for things on there. And that'll help you with, it'll also help you with possible internship possibilities. And so that's the goal of Handshake, is to help you with getting connected with things that might be useful in your major. So let me know if you can't get that to work, if you have any questions about that. Okay, your grades, I'm not going to click on grades because mine looks different than yours. But if you see anything that's strange in the grades, that's not the way it should be, just let me know. If you turn in an assignment and it's been over a week and I haven't graded it, now I usually wait till the due date to grade things, usually. So if it's not past the due date yet, then don't worry. But if it's a week past the due date and you haven't received a grade, you might want to check with me because maybe I didn't receive it. Okay. Or sometimes what will happen is students will submit the wrong file, and I'll post a 0 on there and I'll tell them, hey, it's the wrong file, please resubmit. And they don't get that notification. So you want to make sure that you're checking the gradebook often. Make sure you're reading the notifications. Like, for example, did you maybe submit the wrong file? Or you know, just read the comments. I always put comments. I don't take off points without putting comments as to why I took off points. So if you are in question of, hey, that's not right, please get back to me about that. What I don't want to happen is, I don't want you to tell me at the end of the semester, I got a 0 for all my assignments and I'm not sure why. Because you shouldn't wait till the end of the semester to check on like your first assignment to see why you got a 0. It should be like an ongoing thing. So every week, check the grade book, look at your grades, make sure that you got the grade that you thought that you should get. Ask questions about your grade, but don't say, I submitted everything and I'm not sure why I have an F in the class at the very last week of class, because I'm going to say, what happened all semester? Why weren't we checking this? Why is it the last week of class? Because maybe there is something going on. Maybe you're submitting the wrong files, but don't wait till last week class to check on that, if that makes sense. Please be checking on your grades throughout the class and make sure it's an ongoing tally of how you're doing in the class. So if you're doing really well, but then you stop doing work, you'll get 0s in there and that grade will decrease. And so it just tells you how you're doing as things are due in the class. But as I go through the due dates, like for example, let's say you're supposed to read chapter 1, but the due date for chapter 1, reading chapter 1 passes. I will go through and mark 0s for anyone that didn't read it. Now, for reading, you can go past the due date with it, but I want you to know, if you don't read that, you're going to have a 0 in there, and that's going to be your grade. And that's what your grade will look like if you keep that a 0. Now, that can still change. You can still submit it and get credit for it. But I realized in the past, if I don't mark 0 for things, even if I accept them late, for students, then they think they're getting an A in the class because they haven't received 0s and the things that they haven't turned in. And then at the end of the semester, when I go mark 0s and everything, their grade goes from an F to like a D, or, you know, because they didn't turn things in. So I want you to know, every week when things are due, I will put 0s in the place of the things you didn't turn in on time. Now, again, some of those things that you can turn in late and still get credit for it. So you can change that 0 into something else. The quizzes you can't make up for, but everything else you can submit late and still get credit for it. So you can change those 0s. So just contact me if you're not sure what you can do and what you can't do. But I'm just basically trying to tell you, if you leave that as a 0, this will be what happens to your grade. So you know, and everybody's aware, this is what will happen if I don't do this particular assignment. Now, if I do it and I turn it in late, I can bring that up to, you know, just a few points late for the assignment, and my grade will increase, if that makes sense. Everybody with me?
Yes.
Just because there's a 0 doesn't mean it has to stay a 0. So contact me if you're unsure about that. But I noticed that I should put in 0s, because if I don't, then students will think they're doing really good in the class. And then when I start putting 0s later in the semester, they're like, what happened to my grade? So I want you to know, if I don't read this chapter, I don't do this exercise, or I don't do this assignment, this is how it impacts your grade, because things are weighted differently. And sometimes that messes students up with what happens to their grade when they don't do certain things. So if you're confused at all about the weight system in the class, or you don't think the weight is working right in the grade book with what you should have as a score, let me know, and I'll take a look at it. Don't hesitate to schedule an appointment with me to talk about that. Okay. So I want to start talking about chapter 1. Okay. There's a lot in here, but we're going to go kind of quickly through here because it's kind of basic. Okay. So hopefully you know what programming is because you signed up for a programming course. So we all know what computer is, right? And a programmer is the person that is going to write the code to make the computer perform a task. Okay. So we are going to learn how to program in this class. There's some basic things that you should know to get started. And you probably have seen this before in one of your computer classes in the past, but if you haven't, the computer is going to have input. You have input devices. And so that can be keyboard, scanner, cameras, webcam. There's all kinds of ways to get input into the computer. Then there's something called the CPU, the central processing unit. That's going to do all of your equations, all your processing. Then you have something called RAM. That's temporary storage for what you're working on. RAM doesn't last forever, it's just temporary. So if you have more RAM, then you can do more things at a time and your computer can handle it, okay? But then you have something known as a secondary storage device. That's where you actually will store things that you need to keep forever. So if you're working on your program and you want to save your program and pull it up later, then you would save that to, a flash drive or your computer, or, we don't really use CDs as much, right? I wouldn't recommend that as a good option for this class, but if you're going to work on the computers in the lab at the school, you probably have heard of a flash drive before. That's a great option because it's easy to take with you, and you can, just save your work on there. Okay, but if you have your own computer, you could just save it right on the hard drive of your own computer. And then you have output devices. So we have our speakers, we have printers, we have our monitors. Okay, so how does it all work together? Again, we have instructions coming in, or input coming in. We do the processing in the CPU, and then we have output. Okay, so main memory you probably heard of again. This is your RAM. Is going to be your temporary storage for what you're working with. When we're talking about bytes, you may have heard of this before. It's really what we call 8 bits. So you'll see like ones and zeros represented as bits. When we talk about, like, a byte is like a character of data. So if you were in a character on the keyboard, that would be 8 bits, which represents a byte. You don't have to memorize which ones and zeros make up which characters or anything like that. You don't have to learn ASCII or anything like that for this course, but you should know that it's important when you hit different characters, like if you do a capital C versus a lowercase c, that's going to make a difference when you're programming, because they're 2 separate binary representations for a lowercase c and a capital C. So it's going to make a difference when you're coding, whether you make capital letters or lowercase letters. It's going to affect your outcome, okay? Because the computer is not going to understand you if you're typing capitals versus lowercase. So you have to be aware of that, okay? And if you make misspellings, of course, in your code, it's not going to know what you're talking about. So the computer is very strict on, it has to be this exact way, spelled right capitalization for me to understand exactly what you're talking about. Okay, so when we talk about storing things, we're going to talk about memory addresses. And so we call this unique identifier an address. And so you can see that the number 149 is stored in memory address 16, for example, and 72 is stored in memory address 23. This is just an example, but we don't really have to know where it's stored, just have to know that when we're talking about, like, variables, for example, the computer is storing them in an address that we can use later. And we can refer to this based on an identifier that we create. We create a name called a variable, an identifier, and it will pull it from the memory address for us. We don't have to know what memory address things are stored in. Okay, so when we do secondary storage, hold on just a second. When we do secondary storage, we are going to store it somewhere. And again, I really recommend that you get a flash drive if you're coming to campus, or you store it on the computer. And input devices, we're going to talk about, we're going to type our data in through the keyboard.
and use our mouse. And, you know, we're not really going to use cameras. And of course, we're using microphones right now, but everybody good so far? Pretty easy.
Yes.
Okay, you probably have heard of all this before. There's different types of software that people write. We're not really writing word processing software or anything like that. All of our programs are going to be very basic in here because we're just learning some of the basics. I know that some people come into their first class hoping that they're going to write these really spectacular games, but that's not really going to happen in your first class. That will be after you take a few classes. So I know that students get disappointed because they'll see, I did all that work so that I can calculate this equation. Unfortunately, some of the things that we do aren't going to be as exciting as you would hopefully hope for, but learning the basics is very important because you have to build that foundation. And once you know that foundation, then you can move on to bigger, more exciting things. I always tell students that, okay, let's say you're learning C++ in this class. That's going to build the foundation, whether you go on to learn Java or Python or Visual Basic or whatever you go on to learn. If you go on to do other scripting like JavaScript, these basics that you're learning in this class are going to carry over. The concepts of programming stay the same. So every programming language has some sort of variable. It has some sort of conditional, it has loops, it has some sort of methods or functions. They just are coded a little differently. But once you understand those, you can carry that over into other languages and you can create things. So you can, write, games on your phone but you have to learn that foundation first. And if you have a good solid foundation, you can move on from there. But don't be disappointed that we're not going to end up writing these really spectacular programs in your very first class, but you will write more exciting programs as you progress through if you're taking another programming course after this and after that. It takes a while to build up enough to be able to do things like that. Okay, so we're going to always start with something called an algorithm. That's going to tell you step by step how to do something. So before we start coding, it's always good to kind of break things down first. So if you wanted to calculate gross pay, first you want to know some things like what we want to display a message on the screen saying how many hours did you work. Now, this is an actual code. If you were to type that into a computer for code, that wouldn't do anything. But this is just getting an idea of what do you need in order to do this program instead of you just going out there and trying to code it. Because let's say you start coding, but then you realize you didn't really understand what you were supposed to be doing. You didn't really understand what was the goal of this program. It's good to write an algorithm so you know exactly what you're trying to accomplish and see if that's really what you're after before you code it. So trying to think through it. And then once you know, for example, that you want to display a message on the screen asking how many hours did you work, because you have this step-by-step guide algorithm, when you're trying to code it, you can go to the first part and say, okay, now what's the code for displaying that message? You won't forget that part because you wrote it down. Okay, and then we're going to have the user enter the number of hours worked. Okay, how do I do that in code? But because you have the step-by-step algorithm, that reminds you when you're doing your code, oh, I need to do this step and this step. So you should always be thinking before you do your code, what are the different things I'm trying to accomplish? Now, sometimes our programs are really simple. And maybe you're just trying to ask the user, you're trying to convert Fahrenheit to Celsius. So you're trying to ask the user, what's the Fahrenheit? And then do the equation for converting to Celsius and then output it. But it's good to just write down, ask the user for Fahrenheit, convert to Celsius, output, Celsius and Fahrenheit, so that you don't forget to do a certain step. So it's good to think about the algorithm, even if the program is very simple. Okay. We're not writing machine language in here, but machine language is getting down to the ones and zeros. So again, you don't have to know binary or anything like that in this class, but it's good to know that the computer does work with that. And that's what we're trying to get the code down to. But we actually use something called a programming language in this class. We're using C++. And the C++ is going to be a language that we understand. And then the computer is going to convert that to machine language so the computer understands you. So low level would be the ones and zeros, and high level would be the programming language that we're writing. So we don't need to know that machine language because the computer is going to do that conversion for us. Okay. So these are some programming languages you probably have heard of. So this course, we're doing C++. C is a language that C++ is based on. C++ is an updated version of C. So C++ is object-oriented, but we're not going to actually cover the object-orientedness of it in this class. But you can do object-oriented things in C++, but we're doing mainly the procedural part of it because we're getting the foundation done, which is the same thing you can do in C, but C++ again is an updated version of C. In your second class, if you go in and take another class after this, the COSC1437, that would be the Java class, and so I'd be doing Java. We do offer things like JavaScript and Python if you're interested. We also do C#, but those are called non-transfer classes. So if you're doing like computer science transfer classes, that would be our C++ and Java classes, but we do offer extra electives or things you can do if you're thinking about web development in Python and JavaScript. So if you're interested. Does anybody have any questions about any of that? Okay. Okay, so let's see. Oh, I wanted to talk to you about this. So this seems really complicated, but it's really not that bad. So we are going to write some code today, and we're going to write it, we're going to do it online in an editor, but you can do it in a text editor. And when you write that code, at the top, you're going to put something known as preprocessors. Preprocessors are a way to basically preprocess source code before you're compiling. So compiling, you're going to compile. Compiling code is checking for errors and creating object files. And so the preprocessor is extra code that you're using. So basically you put it at the top of the program. So for example, we're going to use something called IOStream. And basically IOStream is a preprocessor directive. And what it is basically a way for you to do like input and output, we'll say. And so when you put that preprocessor at the top, it knows before it compiles, it says, hey, we need this extra code. Let's go get that and add that to those object files to this before we compile it. And so all you have to really know is that we put those at the top, and that allows us to do some extra things in our program so that C++ knows what we're doing because it can refer to those files. Compiling is the main thing you have to know. Compiling is checking for errors. So when you write your code, it's going to check for something called syntax errors. So like, did you use the right punctuation, the right spelling? Does it understand you basically? If it understands you, it will create object files based on your code, your source code. And then what happens is the linker will actually take those object files and link them together and generate an executable. And once we have the executable, then we can run the program. Now, when you click run in that editor that I showed you before, the C++ shell, it will do all of that for you. It will do the preprocessor, the compiling, the linking, and run the executable. So it will do all of that for you, so you don't really have to know all the different steps, but it's good to know what's going on. Okay. All right. So this is just a picture of that. And you can see step by step. Over on the right is the actual source code. So does anybody have questions about that?
About the source code on the right, or like the process that like you take?
No, you don't have to understand the source code. We're going to talk about that, the hello world. So just the process, just the overall.
No, no, I understand.
Okay. I know it's kind of a lot to take in, and a lot of this we're actually going to do step by step. So don't worry if some of it's like, what is going on? Because it's kind of a lot to take in. And we're going to talk about what all that code means. So that the pound sign at the top, that IOStream I was talking about, that's the preprocessor. And we're going to write everything in a little function called main And all this is going to do is see out is the output. It's basically going to print hello world to the screen. And we'll talk about what all those different things are. I mean, what's the backslash n and everything when we get to the code. But just that basic idea of how that works. So you'll hear the term IDE. An IDE is an editor, but it basically does extra things for you. So like if you want to download Visual Studio, for example, or Xcode or some of these other editors they have, it's nice because it'll give you extra help. So when you're typing your code, it'll say, oh, did you mean this? Or would you like to fix this? Whereas if you do it in C++ Shell, which is the online editor, it doesn't really give you that. It doesn't give you that extra help. So if you want that, you can download that, but it's going to take up extra space on your computer. So it's really up to you. So this is an example of what Visual Studio looks like. In this example program, you don't have to understand all this, just showing you what it looks like in the editor. If you want to use Visual Studio, you can, but it's completely up to you. Okay, so your program is going to be made up of different sections. So like keywords are going to be things that mean something to the computer. So C++ has a list of keywords, and you can't use those unless you want to do something like when you're trying to create identifiers, you can't use those as identifiers. You have to create your own unique identifiers, but the keywords mean something. Like if you tell it to, you know, what data types you have, we're gonna talk about that. Those are keywords. Basically, it tells the computer what to do. It knows what those keywords mean. Okay, programmer-defined identifiers are variables. That's like if I want to do this equation and I want to save the result somewhere, I can create an identifier. I can create a variable to save it into for later. Or if I want to get input from the user, I can create this identifier, save that input into the identifier and use it later. So again, we don't have to know the memory address of where things are being stored, but we create these identifiers and the identifiers pull from that memory address, whatever's stored there. And so we'll talk about that, like it's a little involved. There's operators, punctuation, and syntax. So if you take a look, for example, this is a program that's going to take in some input. It's going to ask like, how many hours did you work? Take in the hours. How much did you get paid per hour? Take in the rate. There's operators, like you can do a multiplication. This saves in a variable or an identifier called pay, and then it does the output. This is just a general sense. You're not expected to know all this right now. Chapter 1 just kind of gives you an overview of everything, which I think is a little overwhelming, but just bear with me. We are going to go through step by step as to what different things mean. So like when you're going through it, there's going to be different types of data types. For example, like when you're working with whole numbers, we call that an int. If you're working with decimal numbers, we call that a double. Return means something. These are all keywords. They mean something. So when you type return, C++ knows that you're sending something back. Okay, so it knows what that means. Okay, so these are some keywords that you use that tell the computer certain things. Okay, identifiers are a way to save something for later. Those are your variables. We're going to have certain operators that mean something. Again, we're going to go through this step by step. This is just the general. So like, for example, the arrows pointing one way means output and the arrows pointing the other way means input. C out means output, C in means input. Okay, we have different punctuation that means things, like when we put commas in certain places, semicolons we put at the end of a line. We'll talk about all of that. All of that means something. And so you have to do that in a certain order for the computer to understand you. And that is called syntax. Okay. All right, and we're going to talk about variables. We have a whole chapter on variables next. It goes into much detail about this. So just in a general sense, it's a way to hold values for later in memory. And when you define them, you say what they are, what the names of them are. And again, we're going to go into depth about this later. Okay. So we can see, we can have like a double means decimal. That means you're going to have a decimal. You're going to store hours, rate, and pay. I think that's kind of a lot for right now, but we're going to go through that later. Okay, so we always want to think about input we want. Then how are we going to process that input? Are we going to do equations on it? What are we going to do with that data? And then what do we want to display to the user? Okay, so the programming process is more than just coding. So you have to know what you're trying to do. You have to write flowcharts and algorithms and really try to break down what you're trying to do to make sure that you understand it correctly before you actually code it.
Then when you code it, you're going to have to compile it to check for errors. And if it has errors, you have to fix those errors and make sure that it does exactly what you want it to do. Now, you're going to always have to test your programs. I say this because just because you think it does what you want it to do, of course, testing, there's people and companies where their job is just to test and try and break things. So let's say you're coding a video game. You're going to want to test it first to make sure that it doesn't crash in certain places or things don't happen. You're going to want to try different scenarios out and make sure it works. You're not going to want something to fail in certain parts. And so you have to do testing with whatever you're doing. So if you have an equation with output, make sure you test it with multiple data to make sure it works, because you might get lucky and maybe it works with the first number that you put in, but maybe other numbers it doesn't work with. So you have to make sure that you test it and then make sure that everything's valid. Okay. We talked about this. In this class, we're not doing object-oriented programming, even though C++ is an object-oriented programming language. C is a procedural language, but we are really just using the procedural part because we're just learning the foundation. And your next course, you will focus on this object-oriented paradigm, and that will be the focus of your second course if you take the COSC1437 class. But in this class, we are just focusing on the basics of, how we do programming, how do we make decisions? How do we repeat code? Some of the basics, and we're not really using that object-orientedness that C++ has. Okay, does that make sense to everybody?
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody have any questions so far? I know that was kind of a lot to take in. I don't want you to worry about the variables and everything so much because we are going to have a whole chapter on that. But I want to do a basic program with you. So you can do, if you want to do this with me, or you can do it later, but you will have to submit it for getting credit for it. So it's up to you if you want to do it now or you want to do it later. I like to use C++ shell to code. Another one I like to use in case that doesn't work for you or you like this one is online GDB. Okay. It's just a different look. The nice thing about online GDB is you can actually switch the language up here. So like you can use it for Java and C++. Okay. So I can switch. It has a different look to it. So really either of them works. Whichever one works for you. Now, when you have to turn it in, you can copy and paste the code that you have and just put it in a text file and submit it to me, or you can actually download it and send me that file when you're turning it in. That's fine, whatever way works for you. If you're doing Visual Studio, you can just give me the CPP file, which is the C++ code. You can turn that in. So if you're doing like Xcode or Visual Studio, you'll have a whole project folder, but I don't need the whole project folder. I just need the C++ code. So if you could just paste it into Notepad, a text editor, or you can just give me the CPP file, whatever is easiest for you. So if you're in online GDB or you're in C++ shell, whichever one you like better. I like this one. I think it's a little easier to read. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I want to talk about the different pieces of this. So this, actually, we're going to start from scratch. So at the top, we're going to put something called a comment. And you can do // and you can put like your name, for example, or what the program is about. So you can put like, for example, this program will print hello world to the screen. Okay. And then you can put // written by, and then you can put your name up here, and then you can put today's date, January 19th. Okay. Now, when you do this, these are called single line comments. Okay. Because what it does is when you put the // and you want to put a space between the two slashes, it actually ignores all of the code after that // on that particular line. Okay. So you can write any character you want. It's ignoring you. And
it's basically just documentation for the person looking at your code. So you can give information about what the program's about, who wrote it, when. You can also put comments throughout your code to let people know, why did you do this particular line of code? Or if you have questions or you want to remind yourself, hey, this kind of line of code does this. You can put single line comments to remind yourself of certain things throughout your code. But I like you to have this basic information at the top of your code, your name and everything, just like on a paper, you write your name so you know who wrote it. Okay. Now, if you want to, you can do a multi-line comment. Let me show you how that looks. Okay. You can take off the single line comments and you can start with an asterisk, a slash asterisk, and then you can do anything after that. So if you start slash asterisk, any code you write will do multiple lines until you do asterisk slash. And so it basically ignores everything between the slash asterisk and the asterisk slash. Okay. And so you can do multiple lines instead of doing slash slash before each line. Okay. So that's called a multi-line comment. Is everybody with me so far?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So that's our documentation. So we can go down a few lines. And when you're doing your code, it doesn't matter if you skip extra lines. You can jam everything together and not have extra lines, or you can put extra lines. As far as C++ is concerned, it doesn't matter. Okay, so we're going to put our preprocessors at the top. So we're going to put include, and we're going to put IO stream. So it looks like this. And the IO stream is what's going to allow us to do output. Okay, so when we do the C out, the IO stream allows us to do that. Okay, and then we're always going to have a function called main, and it always looks like this: int main, parenthesis, parenthesis, and then you do a curly brace. Now, you can either do a curly brace here, or you can do it here. It doesn't matter. Okay, but did you see how when I hit enter, I actually got the closing curly brace and it indented it for me? Did everybody see that?
Yes.
When you have an opening curly brace, you're always going to have a closing one. So this editor automatically put that on there for me to help me. It says, oh, you have an opening, you're going to have a closing. And then you want to indent your code to make it easier to read. So this function that we have, main, whenever we click run, whatever's in there is automatically going to happen. It knows that it automatically executes main. Okay, this function we have. So for right now, we're putting all of our code in main. Okay, and it has to be called main or it's not going to understand you if you change the name of it. Okay, now we don't have to know what that int is for. We'll talk about that later. But you have to write the name like that, main, and you're going to put those two parentheses. And again, we'll talk about what that means later. But main is always going to start with a curly brace and end with one. And anything that's included inside of main is going to go inside those two curly braces, and you want to indent it. Now, if you don't indent it, it will work, but it'll be hard to read. Okay, so I equate it with like when you write an English paper, you have certain things that you do as far as like how many spaces do you have after a period, or how wide do you make your margins, or do you hit enter 2 or 3 times? It makes your paper hard to read if you don't, but people still can read your ideas. So if you don't indent things correctly in C++, it actually doesn't affect how it runs, but the person looking at your code, it irritates the person looking at your code. In certain languages, if you don't indent correctly, like Python, it won't work. But in C++, if you were to push everything over on the left-hand side and not indent correctly, it'll still work. But I would be a little irritated, and other people looking at your code would be irritated. So you want to indent even though it doesn't affect your outcome, because someone looking at your code, just like your English teacher, would be aggravated if you didn't follow the rules for writing your paper. If you were like making things really big font, really small font, they could still read it, but they would be like, why did you do that? That's hard to read, right? That's the same thing for indentation. It makes it easy to read. So inside of here, what we're going to do is type std : C out, and then 2 little arrows. And we're going to type inside quotes. And you notice when I put the first quote, it put the ending quote, because if you have a beginning, you have to have an end. And we're going to put, what do we want to print to the screen? We're going to put hello world. You can put an exclamation point in there if you want to. You don't have to. Okay, just like that. Okay, so C out means we're going to do output. Okay. And what do we want to print? This is called a string. Okay. The string is text that you want it to look exactly like that. So we put double quotes around strings, text that we want exactly like that. Hello world. So then down here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say return 0 semicolon. Now, you don't have to exactly know what this means right now, but when we talk about functions later in the class, main is a function and main returns an integer. And so we just to keep C++ happy, we say return 0 because it's supposed to return a number. If you don't put it on there, it will be okay because it'll default anyways, but it's good programming practice to put it on there. You don't have to exactly understand what it does right now. You will understand that later in the class. If you skip it, it's okay, but you should try to put it on there if you remember. Okay, so if I click run, what this is going to do is it's just going to print hello world down here in the output. This is the output window for online GDB. Okay, so it says hello world. I know that's super exciting. Okay, now there's some things you can change that don't matter. Like some people when they're coding, they'll put this curly brace up here with the start of the function. We call this a function, the main function. I do that a lot. But some people don't like that, and it's completely up to you. Some people like to line them up like this, where the beginning and the ending, and some people like to put it up here. So you'll see people do both of those, and either way is fine. The only thing that I would say is make sure the ending one lines up with the int here. So you can see that this is it, and everything's indented here. As far as spacing goes, it doesn't really matter if you put extra spaces in your code, or if you like everything to be condensed. That doesn't matter to me. Some teachers are very picky about that, but that doesn't matter to me. I like to kind of have some space, but I won't take off if you don't. Okay. Now, if you mess things up in here, like I don't have this quote here, then when you run it, you'll get these things called errors. You can actually move these here if you have more errors to see what's going on. It doesn't understand. It's trying to show you, hey, when you look at this hello world, something's not right. And it's trying to say you're missing terminating character. It's not really sure. It's not really giving you, it doesn't say missing quote. So sometimes what it says is more helpful, but you have to know, hey, I'm supposed to have a quote there. So when you're doing programming, you have to be very detail oriented. You have to look at the line that it says is incorrect and look at all your punctuation, your capitalization, your spelling. Make sure everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be, because if one little thing is off, the whole thing doesn't work. Okay, so it's very, very, very picky. Okay. Is everybody with me so far?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, now this is optional, but something that I like to put that in there is this thing called using namespace. Now, I like to do this because if you put this in here, then you don't have to say this after you ever output an input line, std. Okay, you can take that off of there. So if you put this, you can take that off. Now, if you're only going to do one output line, it might be easier just to do it. But if you're going to do multiple output lines, I like to put this in there so that I don't have to keep doing that. So that helps you so that you can take that off of there. It gives you the same output though, so it really doesn't matter which way you do it. Okay. Now, I want to copy this line here and show you what happens if you do two couts. And let's say here, I want to say like, I am learning C++. Okay. Now, if I run that, I should have two different lines that say, hello world, I'm learning C++. But you see that it actually ends up being one output line. And I didn't have to put this std because I put this using namespace here. Do you see how it's all in one line? It doesn't look so nice. So there's something in C++ called endline. And if you put the little arrows here, you can put end L. This is an L, not a 1. It stands for endline. So end L is end line. Okay. And you can actually put it on both of them so that you don't have anything that ends up on that line in the future. So if I do that, what happens is I actually get two separate lines, and then this ends up down further as well. So I like to put this end line on the end because that causes it to go to the next line. Even if you do two separate cout statements, these are called statements here, they end with a semicolon. It doesn't cause it to be on separate lines unless you actually put this end L here. Okay. Another way you can do it is you can use, and I have all of this in the exercise for you. If you want to go back through this, I'll show it to you in just a bit. Instead of using end line, another way that you can do it is actually there's something called a \n. So if you put \n inside of your quotes, it has to go inside of quotes. It will actually act as an enter. Like if you hit enter, because if you hit enter, it doesn't actually register as an enter in your output. So you can't hit enter. So instead of hitting enter, you do \n, and it has to be backslash, not the other slash. And the N has to be right next to the slash. If you put a space, it won't work. Okay. If you wanted 2 enters, you could put \\, but let me show you. See how it's still on, it's on a new line? If I take that out, it's on the same line. But if I put that \n in there, it's on a new line instead of having to do the N line. And if I do \, then I get 2 lines because it's like hitting enter twice. So this is called an escape character. The \n is going to register something. It means something. So whenever you do \ inside of quotes, it's an escape character. And the next character that comes after there actually registers as something. So there's a couple different escape characters that you can do. Like for example, \t is a tab. It's like hitting tab key on your keyboard. Another thing that's hard to do that you have to use escape character for is like, let's say you wanted to put C++ inside quotes here. Well, your program has a problem with that because when I try to put quotes around C++, it's like, and it put an extra one on there. It's really confused because it's like, you can't end and start and end and start, and it doesn't understand that. So this looks really strange, but every time you want to put actual quotes inside your quotes, like you actually want to display the quotes, you have to put \quote. So this actually \quote actually puts a quote in your output. And then this \quote actually puts a quote in your output. So that if I were to run it, I would actually see quotes inside my output. And then this quote actually ends my string. So I have to say when I'm doing output, I have to say what I want to actually display that goes inside quotes. But then if you actually want to display the quotes, then you have to add this extra \ in the quote with it to display it. Okay. And so if you make a mistake anywhere, like you forget a semicolon and you run it, it's not going to run. Okay. So you have to be very careful when you're doing it that you watch every single detail. Okay. Now, when you're doing it, let me go back here. I have this all explained in the exercise for you. So if you feel like that was too fast, if you go here to the chapter 1 exercise, I have it here for you. And I tried to explain all of what I just did. I did it in C++ shell, but you could do it in online GDB or C++ shell. It doesn't, either way is fine. Okay, so I have everything explained line by line. Here's all the different escape sequences that you might want to use and examples with that. And so just so that I know that you did this, you get credit for this. And so when you complete that, if you just completed that with me and you have it finished, you can just click start assignment and upload it for me, the text file or the CPP file. Or if you haven't had a chance to do it and you were just watching when I did it, you can do it and then submit it later. Okay, just make sure you submit it by Sunday at 10 and you get credit for that. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Okay, is everybody with me? Did I lose a bunch of people?
No.
Okay, so here, I just want to make sure. So for this Sunday, everybody knows to do the discussion activity 1. Hopefully you can do that sometime before Sunday. We did the exercise together, so you should have that done. But if you didn't, make sure you do that. And let me just check the syllabus so you can see. You're always checking the syllabus to see what's due, the due dates, but it also says on Canvas for you. So you can look. You can always look on the syllabus or look on Canvas to see the due dates. Canvas should bring up, I'm sorry, let me see. I think I accidentally hit stop sharing. Did it stop sharing my screen? Here, sorry.
Yes.
Sorry about that. I was trying to, sometimes when I go up the top, this thing's in my way.
I'm trying to pull up the syllabus. You can look at the syllabus for due dates, but you can also look at Canvas that should have the due dates on there for you. So chapter 1 is what we just did. This is just an introduction, and make sure you read chapter 1. So that's really all you have to do for this week. If you feel like that was easy and you want to get a head start, you could start chapter 1 assignment, which is based on what we just did for the exercise, making sure that you understand what we did for that. And then you have to do it on your own. So if you want to come in on Monday, if you need some help with that, I'll be there. And then you have to take the quiz on the syllabus and chapter 1. Remember that you can use your notes and everything for the quiz, so you can actually have the syllabus open. You don't have time to be reading things while you're taking the quiz, though, so make sure you have notes, or at least you know where things are located before you start taking the quiz. Okay, so does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so no questions on anything that, the class or, what we did in the exercise? Everybody's good?
Hey, Professor.
Don't forget to take attendance.
Yes, thank you. I was just about to do that. What I'm going to do is stop sharing my screen again in a second once everybody's okay. And then I'll take a attendance real quick. So yeah, make sure you stick around for just a few more minutes for me, please, so I can take attendance.
Gotcha.
Thank you for reminding me. And again, well, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yes. So for the chapter 1 exercise, is the main goal like the end product to code hello world and then I am learning C++?
Yes. And so all those steps that I did in there about changing things and everything, I won't really know if you did that. You don't have to take screenshots or anything. It's just a practice. The exercises are all about practice and understanding how to do it. And so that's why they're not weighted as high as far as, how much they're worth, because it's given you step by step. But I still think it's important because it teaches you, how do I do these different things? So when you have to do the assignment, you kind of have some examples to work with. Now, your book has lots of examples, so it's not going to be your only code that you get to look at. But I just want to make sure that I believe that the more you do it, the better you get. And so in your book, you're going to have problems where they say, code this line, like we want to do this. How do you code this? And they're going to have you code it, because reading it just isn't enough. You're not going to learn how to program by reading. So I know it seems like a lot of work, but the more you code, the better you get at it. So I have different ways of having you code it. And sometimes I might give it to you. Sometimes you have to figure it out on your own. So practice makes perfect, right? That's what I think anyway. So I know it's a lot of work, but hopefully by the end you have a strong foundation. That's my goal anyways. So that you feel like you can go into any different areas and scripting or programming, and you have that foundation that you need to get started, hopefully. Okay. Does anybody have any other questions? I am checking the chat, so if you have questions, just let me know. I know some of you had questions about the book. So if you're still having trouble with the book, if you go today and try again, send me an email and let me know. I'll have to check on your account, see if I can make it work. So send me an email if you're having trouble getting the book to work. Yeah, so if you're trying to save your code, I had a question about this. There's 2 ways you can do it. You can just actually copy all of your code. So just highlight it and Control-C, or I like to do Control-A to make sure I don't miss anything. That does everything. Control-C or right-click copy. And then you can paste it into like Notepad. If you have Windows machine, you should have Notepad. You can paste it in Notepad and save it just as like a text file. Or you can just download it. There's this little download button. You can download and save it that way. Whatever is easiest for you. Yeah. I'd like to, if you take a screenshot, I can see it. But if you can actually paste the code in for me, that way, if there's something, I can do testing that way. If it's a screenshot, I can't really do testing. Like if you do something in a unique way, I want to test it. I don't want to have to type it all in myself. So if you paste the code in that way, I can copy the code myself and take a look at it if something is unique and I want to make sure that it actually does do what it's supposed to do.
On a Mac, do you want us to use text edit?
Yeah, that's perfect. Or if you happen to use Visual Studio, in Visual Studio Project, there'll be a CPP file. You can just send me that. You don't have to put it into a text file. So any of those ways, as long as I get your code. But yeah, if you can, if the only way you can do it right now is to screenshot, that's fine. But in the future, I'd like you to copy the code, because as your programs get more advanced, I can look at it and see if it works, but I might want to be able to test it and play with it if you do something in a different way. And if I actually have the coded, it makes it easier for me, so I don't have to type anything. So, okay, so if you have any trouble submitting it, just let me know, but hopefully you have different options, so something will work for you. And if you may like C++ Shell, you may like online GDB, you may like Visual Studio, you may like Xcode. Give different things a try and see what works for you. Everybody's different, so pick one that you like. I'm not real picky about that as long as I get the code. Okay. Any other questions? I'm going to take attendance in just a minute, but I want to make sure before I shut my screen off, everybody's good. I know I didn't do like introductions like I typically would in the classroom, but I'm hoping that the discussion board gives you a chance to get to know each other. So you can read about each other and see, are other people coming with programming experience, or maybe there's people in your major that you can talk to. I like to read those discussion board entries because that tells me how many computer science people do we have, how many cybersecurity people do we have, how many people are in engineering. And so it gives me an idea of where everybody is and where they're headed. Okay. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen then.